telling Will last night, your ambassador Smiles, who, for Christmas, we sent our top clients, friends with the props guy from Hollywood. So this is a sword from 300. And as you can see right here, like this is like you know, you could not just you're not just losing an eye, you're losing like a torso. So we had it engraved and sent it to people, but he called me and said, "Do you want these swords tempered?" And I was like, "I don't even sure what does that mean?" He said, "Well, are you going to sharpen them?" I was like, "Oh, no. We're edgy and we're all interested in success, but I don't have that big of an insurance policy, so I was just anyway, you guys can see that for a second. Good morning. Let me take the 2 seconds to just tell you a little bit about me, and then we'll jump in. I always feel like I need to share 10 seconds of my background. That way you know if I make some radical comments that I am as clueless as I am sounding in the moment. So I run an international consulting company called Waldschmidt Partners. I started my first business when I was 12. Done what seems like a lot of different things, from selling air conditioning systems to selling high tech. Made millions and millions of dollars, made $15 million when I was 25, running businesses. I often tell people, if you don't know my upbringing, like Tiger Woods was raised to play golf, I was raised in the business, raised in a Christian Baptist family, had to read a book a day, reading my dad's law books at 12. I had no choice but to be successful. That was just what was forced upon me. So right now, I help companies all over the world. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Istanbul, Turkey, and Tokyo, Japan. Help them with radical ideas. Most of our clients are multi-billion dollar companies. So I would say this to the groups I'm at. I'm not pitching you on anything. You can't hire me, so there's no upsells, add-ons. There's no go to the back of the room and do this. We love people who want to change and want to improve, want to be better. That's what our whole mission is about. We make millions of dollars each year, charging big companies to do stuff their mom told them to do when they were 12. So for you guys today, I want to have a really candid discussion, an edgy discussion. If you have questions, if you want to challenge, that's my background right now. We do work in about 30 different verticals. So everything from airplane manufacturers like Boeing is a client, sports leagues like the NFL are clients of ours. Cars are not something that we're doing anything at all. Every experience I've ever had until listening to Tracy in a car dealership was not bad. They were awful. That's the man size sword right there. That was the car guy. Yeah. But that's not like a lot of other industries. I can't say I've had some great experiences in my attorney's office or my accountant's office as well. So I know that that's my bias going into this, okay? Hang with me still? Did they tune me out automatically now that I said that? Let me start, if you don't mind, by telling the story. Everyone told me to gulp some water. It's going to make a loud sound. Just cut that out, please. It was 1968. The Olympics. Does anyone know what the Olympics were in 1968?
Mexico City.
Oh man, smart people. Love it. 1968 Olympics. Mexico City. Amazing story happened at the Olympics in 1968. Actually, that's probably not accurate. The story happened after the Olympics. Olympics were over. They did that thing that we do now where Britney comes out and sings the songs, everyone dances, throws balloons, doves go in the air, and the Olympics are over. We blow a horn, good. Except we didn't have Twitter back then, so no one knew what was going on. Olympics were over. Crowd was starting to thin out. If you've ever been to Mexico City, you know at nighttime there's kind of a haze of fog that takes over a part of the city. Olympics are over, events go on, people are starting to shuffle out of their seats, and right in the middle of this, the announcer picks up the microphone and says, "Please return to your seats." Now you can imagine if you go to your favorite sports game, wrestling, and you're watching your team and the game's over, you see them slam dunk the ball, and you're like, "All right, we're out." And all of a sudden the announcer says, "Please go back to your seat." You can imagine you'd be a little concerned, confused, like, what's going on, right? What's actually happening? So as people are going back to their seats, off in the distance they notice, well, looks like a big blob of blue light. The fog of the night's there, just kind of this big blob of blue in the distance. Now, as they're tittering back and forth and talking amongst each other, what's going on? Do you know what's going on? Do you know what's going on? What do you know? No one knows what's going on. The announcer takes a few more seconds and says, a marathon runner is finishing the race. The Olympics are over. So, we've already heard. In fact, now the crowd's really talking because earlier that day, an Olympic record was set in 1968 that had never been set before. Dan Waldschmidt from Ethiopia won the marathon for 2 consecutive Olympics. Now, we know the African nations right now. You go to Boston, you go to Chicago, you go to New York, it's going to be somebody from an African country who wins, right? They just dominate the industry. But this is 1968, and it wasn't always so dominant that Africa dominated these long distance runs. Dan Waldschmidt was the first runner who had won back-to-back Olympics in the marathon. It was crowning achievement, stood on the podium, not only the award, but it set this brand new Olympic record. People were thinking, man, this has already happened, what's going on? Well, Joseph Stephen Aguare was another runner from Africa. Except he wasn't used to training like Dan Waldschmidt at the high altitude that they knew would be in Mexico City. But he kept up. 1 mile in, 2 miles in, 3 miles. You ever seen these marathon runners? We get our elbows up, right? That's our defense. We're not like ultimate fighters, so we have to keep the elbows up as weapons. But he was running in the middle of the pack, and about 11 miles in, he was a little hazy from the higher altitude. He tripped and fell. There were 75 runners. Because he was at the front of the pack, the runners behind him couldn't stop. Most of those runners ran right over John Stephen Aguare. As he fell, he ruptured the tendons in his knee. His knee was actually pulled out of socket. He broke his collarbone, 37 stitches. Blood was dripping down his face. Trampled by runners, he lay on the side of what was now a Mexican highway. The runners kept running by. The police who escorted them kept escorting them by. The marathon was over. Dan Waldschmidt won some awards. The Olympic songs were sung, and people started going home. And Joseph Stephen Aguare lay on the side of the street. So he decided that he was going to make it back 15 miles to the stadium. And so if you ever will see grainy pictures, pre-iPhone, of this gentleman entering the stadium, you'll notice wrapped around his knee is a white piece of cloth. A white piece of cloth is his shirt. Joseph Stephen got on his feet, took his shirt off, wrapped it around his leg, began to hobble on the side of this Mexican highway back to the stadium. Well, drivers started going around him. People started honking their horns. Who is this guy? What's happening? Get off our street. We're trying to get places. Finally, one of the motorists notified the police. The police came to the scene and asked John Stephen, what are you doing? And he said, I'm trying to get to the finish line. So the police were a little perplexed by this and then realized that he had a bib on and a number. Realized he was part of the Olympics. So they got on their CB and radioed to the Olympic officials and said, you still have somebody finishing the race. So that's the blue blob, blue light. And now, as it comes closer to the stadium, you realize it's 2 police motorcycles. And the thin, simple blue lights on the back of the motorcycle light spinning. And in between them is this person limping and lurching along, making his way to the stadium. Well, there were about 43,000 people still in the stands at this time, getting ready to leave. These announcements were made. They see the blob of blue light. And they did what I imagine we would all do if you were to see this happen live. Is that you're just silent. You're just watching, right? There are these moments in time when something so unimaginable happens. You have to pause and consider what's going on. How could something so fantastical, how could something so unimaginable, outrageous happen? Joseph Stephen came into the stadium. He limped his way around that whole loop of the track, almost in slow motion, if you can imagine in your mind, lurching, limping. When he reached the finish line, there was already an ambulance there with a stretcher. They caught Joseph Stephen. He actually passed out. Took him in an ambulance to the hospital. The next morning, pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, sports reporters descended on his hotel, his hospital bed, and asked him the question that I imagine all of us would ask him. Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And he gave a simple answer that's powerful for all of us. He said, he's from Tanzania, my people didn't send me 5,000 miles to start the race. They sent me 5,000 miles to finish the race. Now, think about the numbers. 75 runners started that race that day from all over the world. 57 runners actually finished the race. He dropped out. 3 runners stood on a trophy stand. 1 runner, man of the world, they set an Olympic record. But 1 person created a story so inspiring and unprecedented that we still talk about it decades later. I have spent the last 4 years studying thousands of people like John Stephen Aguirre, ordinary people who achieved outrageous success in business, math, sports, science, politics. Yes, I know, you can't be successful in politics. And I come back to the simple formula for people like John Stephen Aguirre that challenge me and should challenge all of us how we can transform our lives. You know, when I see someone like, John in running the Olympics, who makes the choice to get back up on his feet, I'm reminded of what most of us have to do, even like this morning, getting out of bed. How many of you got out of bed a little earlier than you wanted to? Right? For me, I drove here from Greenville. I think other of you drove in from other places. Some of you stayed here, right? And you probably got up a little earlier than you wanted to, a little earlier than you felt it. It seems small, but these small choices that we have to make to get back up, to keep doing something we know we should be doing, play a difference. So this morning, I don't want to tell you 1,000 stories. We don't have enough time, and Tracy would run me out of the room. But I want to talk a little bit about how we can be edgy and how we can adopt the formula that I saw exemplified in 1,000 ordinary people. By the way, it doesn't matter how much money you've made. I've met some incredible people. I'm sure many of you have met some incredible people too. And who will tell you that successful person that you look up to, that person you think who's, oh man, he walks on water. Right? That's Tracy. Right? We're all looking at him with googly eyes. He'd probably tell you, I'm probably more ordinary than you imagine, right? I kind of view myself as just a nobody doing something that's pretty awesome. So the message today is for all of us, and I want to dig into these 4 characteristics. We call them edgy. When I took the time to start looking at what I thought were people, that every once in a while you hear a story of a mom, their son falls under a car, right? Mom goes in there, picks him up, right? Most of those are just fantastical stories, and maybe there's not enough truth there, but every once in a while you see something like a story with John Stephen Aguirre, and you go, this really happened. I saw it with my own eyes. I'm not really sure how it happened or what happened. Or you see a company like Zappos. Anyone ever buy shoes from Zappos? Let me ask a better question. Anyone have a wife or a spouse? There we go. Now everyone's up, right? Who buys shoes from Zappos? You see a company who says, listen, in the age of e-commerce where we're going to charge you for expedited shipping, we're going to give you free shipping, right? Anyone here in finance, right? In finance, that's like an equivalent of saying, hey, you bought the car, so we're just going to give you a free set of tires. We're probably not doing that promotion, are we? I've never heard of that promotion, right? That's probably a bad promotion. Here's Zappos giving away the tires. We're just going to give it to you. You pay for 3-day shipping, we're going to send it to you overnight. And oh, by the way, remember the days when you'd buy shoes, you'd take them back to the shoe store? What was the first thing they did? So they'd look at the bottom, make sure there's any dirt. It's like, look, I got my shoes dirty just taking them out of the box. Had you walked around on these shoes, right? Am I the only person that tried to return a pair of shoes? And they were like, we can't take these back, sir. You walk. Zappos changed that whole model. Zappos said, hey, walk in our shoes 7 days. You want to get married in our shoes? You want to go to the prom for stuff? That's fine. You don't like them? Send them back. And of course, analysts said, ooh, man, you're going to lose your shirt. You're going to lose money. This isn't going to happen, right? And what happened? People had such an incredible experience that they bought 1 pair of shoes, and then they bought 2 pairs of shoes, and maybe they didn't like that one, so they sent it back, but instead of giving their money back, they bought a 3rd pair of shoes, and they bought a 4th pair of shoes. And then, unless their husband saw the credit card bill, they kept getting 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and what happened is they went from a $1 billion company 9 years later to a $1 billion company. And so, how does that happen? I see this, right? I look at it and go, how do you build a $1 billion company giving shit away? Right? How do you do that? They did. So I began to ask myself these questions. When I was in Washington, D.C. building my two companies, I looked around at what people were telling me I should be doing, and looked at my famous rich friends who weren't doing any of that, and said, the formula that I'm being told to be successful isn't what I see successful people doing. That's why I started looking for Edu. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night and say, let's go do this. I just looked around and people were telling me, you should do this. You should be this person. Of course, I'm somewhat biased. I dropped out of college twice. I really tried. That's what I tell people. I tried. I went 3 years. It didn't work out. I was running a big tech company. I went 2 more years. And then I realized one day, the only reason why I'm in college is because my mom says, you'll never be somebody unless you have a degree. And I realized that bar was not high enough for me to continue going back to school. So I decided to leave. And then I looked around and I saw my other famous friends who had made lots of money. And not just making money, but had changed the world with organizations and company growth and nonprofits, and they were breaking the rules. And so I thought, okay, so the rules that I'm being told to follow aren't the rules that work, at least in my universe, because no one I know was following those rules and being massively successful. So those rules don't work. I need a new set of rules. I don't have the rules. Let me go study. So I thought, where do I study? Who do I study if I want to be successful, right? Do I want to study Donald Trump? No, he's full of shit, right? He was born rich. How many of you had a father leave you $40 million? Anybody? If so, I want your license plate. I will be robbing you. Anyone born $40 million? No. Anyone, born with a silver spoon where nothing you could make 50 mistakes and still rebound? Anyone have that? Right? Probably not. That's not most of us, right? Most of us had to make everything we have right now. So I wanted to look at ordinary Joes, people who were broke, people who were busted, people who went bankrupt. Right? People who lost their homes investing into a business. Anyone lost their homes? I did. No one else? Good. So I'm the biggest idiot in the room. Yeah. What's the roadmap for being all in and still that not being enough? Right? So I wanted to look at those guys. So I started looking at stories. Sports is easy, right? You just go to ESPN, greatest comeback stories of all time. Unlikely to hear of them. I'm Googling. This stuff's coming in. My friends are sending me stories. One story turned into 2 to 5, 10, 100, 200, 1,000 stories later. I said, whoo, I've got a whole brand new roadmap for what I wanted to be. And I thought that the number one reason that separated winners from everybody else in business, math, sports, science, and politics was that winners were more extreme than everyone else. In fact, I even had it tattooed on my arm right there. Live extreme. You can't see it in the back, right? I was very confident. A lot of lessons you can do. Now I just put a t-shirt. See, I changed the formula, I just changed the t-shirt. And being extreme is one part, that's the E and Edge. So we'll just get the rest tattooed and we'll be able to look like I planned it that way. As I began to uncover, I began to realize that superstars that shared the same 4 qualities. They were extreme, they were disciplined, they were giving, and they were human. Now again, I pointed out that I'm probably the biggest idiot in the room, so when I spell human with a Y, it's just because Edge Hub is not as cool as Edge E. So we'll go with my spelling for today. But today I want to talk about those 4 things today. It's extreme, discipline, giving, and human. Now, what I want to impress upon you is that, listen, I spoke to the senior leadership team at GE, who was doing a similar talk, different stories, different application, and an engineer, SVP in the back of the room stood up at the end of my presentation, right? This is why I encourage you to, while I'm talking, fight me if there's a problem. Very Andy stood up and said, Indian gentleman, very smart, said, so we are, we're GE. How are we extreme? And I said, good question, right? We could have handled that 30 minutes ago. Let's talk about that right now. You know what I realized is that the single biggest defining quality of people who achieve great results is 2 words. They try more. Trying's become outdated nowadays. In fact, you'll hear people say these quotes. I love the Twitter, right? Everyone's on the Twitter, tweeting, all that stuff, right? Sharing your comments, right? I love this. People say, oh, there is no try, just do. I guess Yoda said this, right? Sometime way back. I didn't see, again, I grew up 18 years without a TV in my home. It just so happened those were the years when the best movies and TVs were made. So Seinfeld, didn't see it. All the Star Wars, and now people talk, I'm just like, yeah, sure. That was awesome, right? And if they frown, they go, oh no, wrong one, that was bad. So I'm somewhat clueless when it comes to all of that stuff. But, so we have these comments, oh, we're not going to try anything, we're going to do it. This is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Trying is what we do until it's done. But because we've made trying illegal and passe, and something that only losers do, we're not willing to try anything. Right? We're going to do this. You don't do anything. You don't get up and brush your teeth. You try to brush your teeth, and most days you're successful at it, right? Especially if you've got a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I'm like, did you brush your teeth? I think. How do you think? You either did or you didn't. Right? So that's the do part of trying. But we've made trying, especially in our corporate world, because no one wants to admit that they failed. So it's, hey, we're going to go do this. What do you mean we're going to do this? We're going to try to do this. And here's what extreme people understand that everyone else who poses like they're high performers doesn't understand. We don't do anything. Successful people don't do anything. Successful people are something. Understand the difference? I don't do what I do because I do it. I do what I do because of who I am. I'm on a mission to change the world. I'm on a mission to get people to understand what success really is. So I don't do TV shows, and I don't do speaking, and I don't run a multi-million-dollar consultant. I don't do that stuff. I am edgy. I am me, and because of that, everything else happens. Right? That's a small distinction, because right now we're big on results. When we hire a new salesperson, one of the companies I own is a real estate company. A little bit like automotive, when you sit down with the realtor, you say, "How much do you want to make this year?" Right? How much do you want to make? You want to make 100,000? All right, let's work it backwards. So you got to have this many meetings, you got to have this many calls, you have this many meetings, and this many calls. You have to have this many referrals, and from this many referrals, you have to know this many people. How many friends do you know on Facebook? Okay, we got to double that. We got to email us to the top 100. From that 100, split it off into 2 more groups. And that first group email, that person gets a newsletter. Put that person on Twitter. Put that in the funnel. By this time, at the end of the year, you're going to make 110,042 cents. Boom, we're ready to go. 42 cents. 42. Sorry. So we've always got to round it off. So, and what we lose track of is we've got all these plans. Is that we miss the mark. We miss the mark. A lot of illustrations I want to put in the blank. Our average agent in our real estate company grew, I was telling Will, I think, it's crazy, grew their sales 400% the first year they joined our company. Because what we realize in talking to people is that most of us are broken, but we're really good at pretending like we're not. And if we're going to fix shit, the first thing we got to do is find out what the shit is. It's the number one thing I do with big businesses. There's always something that's broken. There's always the passive-aggressive guy in the room. There's always the one person who stops progress. You know how you move forward? You shoot that guy or girl. Don't revise, right? We shoot that person. Then you know what we do? We do what we automatically do. We just move forward. We make progress. But we take somebody, we bring them into our organization. We say, how much money do you want to make? Right? We're going to make that much money. Here's how we work the process. Then we look at, we don't get the results that we want. We then say, ooh, right? And then, here's the first question we ask them as managers. What did you do? Well, you didn't close that deal? The guy left? Well, what did you say to him? Tell me exactly. Don't tell me exactly, right? That's what we do. What exact words did you say? And then what did he? And then what happened? And then we know. We want to ask all these questions so that we can figure out what was done so we know what the results were. Here's the reality of what extreme is. It's not a result, and it's not an action, and it's not even an attitude. It's a philosophy. So I'm a can-do person, so don't get me wrong. In my organization, look, there's time for us to be philosophical, that's like 1% of the time, and then there's time for action. But we focus a lot on actions. What did someone do? We forget that their attitude automatically drives better action. You want someone to make $110,042 this year? You hire someone with the attitude of someone who's worth $110,042. And someone who's got the philosophy that says it's not about the money, but that's a great benchmark. That's a great way to measure my own success. It's great to put fuel in the gas tank. If your car's 5 gallons of gas and my car has 500 gallons of gas, I'm going to go further than you. It's just going to happen, right? So that's my gas in my gas tank. So what we spend a lot of time is what are people doing and not focusing on what's their attitude and philosophy. We were talking last night, Michael and I, were about where to hire people. And I said, you know what, number one place I hire people? Craigslist. I don't use job boards. I don't use recruiters. I think there's a few in here, so I'm not rating on any of you. Who's recruiting?
No, Arthur Litt.
Arthur Litt. Okay, good. We won't rain on him. I'll tell you, the number one place we hire from is Craigslist. Because I want people who are hungry. How many of you have found somebody who's been in the car industry for 20 years and is still hungry to sell cars? Not to manage, not to have their own dealership, but is hungry to sell cars. Who's been doing it 20 years. How many of you met? Have you met one? One, maybe? One. In this room of superstars, we've met one person, two. Let's just say round it off to 5. Right? We've met 5 people in the universe who've been doing this for 20 years. But then we go and we put an advertisement out and say, well, what's all this experience? What do you need experience in? Checking boxes on a piece of paper? You know, knowing what process to send people through your dealership? Look, we want people who have an attitude of driving results. And so if your Craigslist advertisement says someone who wants to learn how to change their life by changing other lives for the better, apply. Jackasses and lazy people need not apply. If you're interested, call this number. We did one time, I put out, I needed to hire 2 positions. I put out an advertisement that said, interviews 7:30 on a Saturday morning. And I came into the room, there were 22 people in the room, and I said, all of you are hired as of right now. All of you. I'm paying you as of right now. My HR person's right here. We filled out the form. You're all hired. By the end of this week, most of you won't be working for me, not because I'm choosing it, but because you're choosing it. That's just how it's going to be. And a couple minutes into the discussion, some people were tittering in the back, and they said, so you guys need to leave, because you're not obviously as obsessed about success as I am. So let's just have you exit to the side right there. And we'll continue on. And we continued on, and by the end of the week, what happened was that a few people leave, and then a few other people left. But we had built an environment where we were warriors. We're not just people selling technology. People at war every day. We wake up saying we're the smallest guys who have less money than every other IBM in the world. We're going to beat them because we work hard. Now, one of the things, and that's why I talk about extreme behavior, one of the things that's passé today, besides doing, is this idea of working hard. We have all these fancy words. We say things like, let's work smart. How many of you have sat in a meeting where someone said that? Find me one successful person who's ever built a legacy off working smart. First. I've never met one. Met some of the richest people in the world. I've been able to consult some of their companies. I remember one person who said, man, Dan, I was there, 22, trying to build my legacy. I was all about working smart, baby. No, you know what you've got guys like Mark Cuban who said, look, I was so broke, I smeared butter and mustard on a piece of white bread. And I ate that for my meal that day. That was my meal that day. Not meals, that was my meal that day. And then we say, well, let me push a couple buttons on some technology, send some autoresponders, wire up some automated tweets, and now I'm gonna win business. And then we have the audacity to scratch our heads and go, I wonder why this isn't working. It's not working because we're not working. Nothing works if we don't work. Right? Now, it may sound caveman and Stone Age to say that if you're not working your ass off, you're not going to be successful. And I hate to tell you, but that's still the truth today as it was back in the days when cavemen were still around. Right? My wife says there still know some Neanderthal behaviors around. Right? Working hard is always the formula for success. You know what happens after you work hard enough? You figure out how to work smart. See, the problem with working smart all by itself is you don't know how to work smart. You're wired to work lazy. But call it smart. And I'm not yelling at you. Because you're here today, right? On a day that you could be doing something else. I'm not yelling at you. I'm talking about the tone you need to set for your people. Is that, I'm doing this. I'm on the Facebook. What are you doing on the Facebook? Putting pictures up or tweeting up? How many people are actually making money? I have to tell you, and again, I'm somewhat biased. I hear all these people talking about how much money they're making off of social. I don't see a lot of money being made off social. What I see is revenue that could have been made in good old-fashioned relationships being people saying, we don't have time for that, so we're going to automate it, and oh, by the way, we're also making some money because people found us on social. Again, I'm talking working with big companies like OV who run multi-billion-dollar campaigns across dozens of industries. We're looking at it at the top and wondering why we're not getting the results that we want. When a human being who genuinely cares about a person can get $10, we're not happy that social media gets us $2. Why? Because we don't have to hire the $10 guy. We can push a button and hopefully get $2 out of it. And then agonize over why we're not getting results. Look, I know this is somewhat radical, and you may disagree with me vigorously that I'm wrong. But part of what we learned from superstars is that we have to start putting in effort. We have to create a tone about what effort is. Now, I'll tell you, I'm referring a lot to one of my old technology companies, but when I first grew this, when I walked in the door, it was about $180,000 in revenue, and I realized it was time for me to go buy it. So I bought the company. And we grew it to $8 million the first year, and then after that we had built it to 150 employees and offices up and down the East Coast before I sold it to Edmund Scientific, which most of us have heard that name before. But when I first came to the company, I realized there was no way I could compete with the big guys in our crowd. And so I realized that we would have, the only thing that could separate us from them would be how hard we could work. And so when I hired employees on the first day that they joined us, now back in that day, remember Gladiator first came out? Remember that sword? So that was the sword that I had created and handed. It was about $300. I handed it to each one of my employees who joined the startup. And when we hired somebody, we gave them a sword. It was part of them joining us. Had their name engraved on it, just like you would see some nice engraving right here. And when we came to meetings sometimes, people would bring their swords with them. We wanted a new guy to speak. All right, ready for battle? And if you looked in, you might see, that's a bunch of frat boys, or that's a bunch of machismo. That's kind of ridiculous, over the top testosterone. But you know what we developed a culture of? It doesn't matter how smart you are, we're going to beat you. Not because we can outthink you, but because when you get tired, we're not going to get tired. And when you get tired of fighting against us, we're not going to get tired of fighting against you. And we're going to outwork you. And then that's going to get inside your head, and you're going to know that you're beaten before we actually really beat you, which means we steal all of your customers and take all of your business away. You know why, Kate? You know why it worked? Good old-fashioned hard work. And, that's not something that's patented by Dan Waldschmidt. Hardly. It's not patented by any successful person. The good news about hard work is that all of us can do it. In fact, all of us should do it. The number one way that you can help craft your companies to be closer this year to your goals than you were last year is to set the tone early in the year that we have a new set of rules we're playing by. The new set of rules includes a really big one. We're going to try more. We're going to try more, which means all of us are going to work more. When I was a young CEO, again, now remember, I'm in the middle of D.C., where, as my dad said, my dad worked for the Bush administration as the deputy director of the NSA, which used to be super cool. Right? Now it's not cool. Now, you don't tell that to people, Dad. Now you're an outcast. He would say Washington, D.C. is a place where even your friends stab you in the chest, right? It was, pretty much dog-eat-dog world. So that was the universe I was in. I realized that, I'm a college dropout. I'm running this company. I've got to be tough. And so I realized the only way to win would be to rally a team behind me. And so often, I would be at work on a Monday, and I'd stay there all night for the second crew. We had a lot of technical analysts who would come in at night and do a bunch of data entry and analysis. I would stay with them, and the next morning I would go home and take a shower and come back to work a couple hours later. And for a couple months, I probably worked, if not 100-hour weeks, it was pretty close. And it's the kind where you're not sure if you're awake or not. You're just like, give me a cup of coffee so I can have another hour and go, and then I'll stop. There's a lot of people who tell you, dude, that's just not balanced. You need to be more balanced. And I just disagree with that, because what I saw happen was my team saw this about me. That guy's here, I'm going to be here. That guy showed up, I'm going to show up. And it's amazing. We call our employees out when they're late to work, yet we show up whenever we want to. Right? Within reason, we could be able to do that because we run the show. Right? We're the bosses. We're the guys who call the shots. So we ought to be able to show up. But there's a precedent about effort and extreme behavior, which says if we want radical results, if we want more this year than we had last year, then we've got to tweak our own behavior and say, look, I'm going to lead from the front. I'm going to be the guy swinging the sword and running full speed ahead of you into battle. If an arrow comes down, it's getting me first. Right? So this is the new rule. So the new rule starts today. We're all going to work a little bit harder. What's that mean? You're not going to leave when your hours are over. You're going to leave when shit gets done. Right? That's when you're leaving. Right there. So another thing I challenge you on to is set new rules. Your goal isn't to hit a number. Your goal is to be awesome. What if someone just told you you don't have a quota? You know what your quota is? You stop when you're awesome. That gets you thinking, doesn't it? That's a new game, right? Someone just took Monopoly and turned it upside down and wedged it in between the sorry box, right? I don't even know how to do that game. What's awesome? We set these guidelines. Here's your quota. You're going to make $100,000, which means you make X amount of money from me, right? That's your quota. And if we get close, good enough. 85+% of sales reps never hit their quota, right? Well, I didn't have quotas. Yet we demand that people hit a certain number, and even when they don't get close, we don't fire them because we're happy that they got 75% of mediocre. So they're kind of good enough to stay here. They're worth that chair and the old desk that's inside the showroom, right? So we allow that sort of behavior to happen. So what we learned from amazing people, ordinary people who achieved outrageous behaviors, is played by a new set of rules. And I'll leave you with this before I move to discipline. If you want radical results for your business, and maybe you don't, one of the honest discussions we need to start having in businesses, maybe it's okay if you coast. Sometimes we push full speed all the time and never just say, look, for 2 months, I'm going to catch my breath. For 3 months, I'm going to catch my breath. That's okay. That's okay. I'd rather have you say, we're going to coach for about 2 months, collect our breath, plant the flowers, let things grow, shine things up, and then we're going to go back at it May 1st. Rather than say, we're going to be incredible, and then act like a loser. Those two don't go together. If you want radical results, you have to exhibit extreme behavior. The first question you should ask in your boardroom, whether you're selling cars or technology, is, what's the most extreme thing we can be doing right now? You know what the reality is? Your competition's not going to be doing that thing. Unless they're in this room. They're not going to be doing that thing. You know what that means? You're automatically the company, the team, the organization that gets noticed. Now, extreme behavior by itself can run you into trouble. I ran into trouble. While I was running these companies, I trained for MMA. At 26, and I write about this in the first chapter of my book, my marriage melted down in wonderfully disastrous, horrific form. Anyone ever had a bad relationship blow up? Good. Not only did I lose a house, I almost lost a marriage. When I get interviewed a lot now, people say, what's your most successful thing you've ever done? Give it to us. Running these big races or this. I say, look, honestly, the hardest thing I've ever done was keep my marriage together. If you've tried to keep your marriage together or tried and failed, you know how horrific that can be. As a man who wants to be in control of your own destiny, or a woman, I don't want to cut you out, having a relationship go bad, anything else that you think, what if you find out your partner's cheating on you? Because you're not there. And you're making millions of dollars and can control most of your universe, but not your relationship. Now it gets quiet, right? So that's where I found myself when I was 26. And it just beat me up inside. And I write about it in the first chapter of my book. I was a little unhinged and tried to commit suicide. And those were not happy days. But I remember no one, at least I don't know that they knew. I didn't make a big show of it at the office. I was kind of Teflon. I just went to work and I was badass and that's what I did. Kind of my refuge from real life. But I remember meeting some of these senior consultants in DC. If you've ever been in DC, everyone's wearing a suit. And so for one reason why now I'm kind of a vigilante against the suit. I remember meeting some of these older gentlemen, and in my mid-20s, I was at least 30 years younger than everyone I was doing business with. And I would meet these wise gentlemen who would say, hey, good job. Hey, how are you doing, Dan? And I remember in one meeting, someone said to me, gentlemen, it just went right through my mind, and I'll never forget. He said, hey, Dan, I want to be like you when I grow up. And hours before, I'm sitting in my office, just like bowling, with a little child, so heartbroken over how my life was melting down. And the first thought that went through my head was, if you want to be like me, how fucked up must you be? Now I say that sometimes when I get asked to speak in front of churches, and I have to but that was the pure, exact thought that went through my head. You must be, if you want to be like me. Because all you see is this stuff, the glitters, the watch, that's all you see, that Washington Post article, Boy Wonder, that's all you hear, that's all you see, that's all you imagine that I am. You don't even know that my world's melting. The stuff that really matters in life is melting down around me. We'll skip to the why. The reality of most of our lives, and I've realized this more and more as people have sent me stories. I get to speak and talk to companies and speak to groups. I get people say, hey, have you heard of so-and-so? And a lot of times it's not. And they'll send me the story, and I'll research them, maybe do an interview, and add them to my collection of outrageously successful people who started off ordinary. Is I realize that pain and fear drives most of the decisions that we make. It impacts who we hire, it impacts how long we keep them around, it impacts the training that we give them. And what's interesting about that is we address all of our pain and then seem to fail to address the pain that motivates our employees. See, what I realized is that my situation that I was going through at 26 is very similar to what goes on to the majority of people every day. Every day. All of those people who show up in church and go, bless God, I'm doing good. They're hurting inside. The people who show up to do business with you, most of them are hurting inside when they walk through your front door or follow them around like puppies, trying to get them to go buy something from us today because we need to make a commission check because we haven't been financially responsible enough to manage our lives better. And so we're hurting and they're hurting, and no one stops and says, how can we help each other heal? There's something amazing about superheroes. They do something that we can't do for ourselves. Heroes heal. They look like they're saving us from a burning building, and it's all magical and mystical anyways, and none of it really happens. But superheroes share that same common theme, is that they heal us. And if you want to be a hero, your whole mission, at whatever you're doing, whether you're selling cars or selling technology, is to heal people. That one smile, that one experience that they have with you, might be the one thing that stops them from blowing their head off. I know that sounds pretty extreme, right? It might be the one thing that makes them so they don't go home and hit their wife, or get drunk and throw something at one of their kids, or get in a shouting match with someone and go do something that they regret for the rest of their life. That one experience, that one interaction that you have a chance to deal with, that's not the exception. That's the rule. Do you know how many times I stand on a stage in front of CEOs of large organizations and share parts of my story, and I look out and I see grown men who are worth millions and millions of dollars with tears in their eyes because they've been there. And they've had that pain. Some of them have it right now in their lives. And it tears them apart. And our whole strategy around how can we be successful, how can we get all this extra money, how can we do all these extra things, is all geared around the stuff that doesn't really matter. It's just extra gas in the gas tank. What really matters is how we help people heal. The number, I said this to my mom's always on the Facebook sharing out stuff. She's putting out something ridiculous the other day, and as a dutiful son, I have to get on the Facebook and correct her. So I made a comment to something about something on there about what's shameful. It's the number 2 killer of all of our kids. Do you know what it is? Number 2 killer, 6,800 kids a month, suicide. Number 2 killer of all of our kids today is kids killing themselves. And you know what? In my own company, my senior vice president who worked at Oracle, left Oracle as one of the founding dudes at Oracle, joined my organization when I was back in DC, my tech company, his own son. Successful. I mean, if you went to this guy's house, he had a real, not a one you get at World Market, a real Picasso painting on the wall. I mean, this guy had money, like he just like it came. Money came out of his pockets. I mean, his son took his own life. My good friend who runs a $7 billion company in DC with the largest security technology consulting company in the world. 19-year-old daughter came home from school last year and said, "I can't beat this addiction. It's not worth living." He comes home. This is his only baby girl in the world. She's gone. She's gone. Heartbroken. This is what's happening. This is what's happening all around us, but because we want to do our thing, we don't ever see. All we see is what we want. What we need. We need to execute our plan. We need to make sure we're on course, on mark, on budget. And we miss that if we could just heal a few people. Not with money, not with discounts, not with balloons, not with clowns, not with bouncy houses. With love. Sometimes that love just an extra second of our time. You doing okay? How can I help you? Genuine. Genuine. Not bullshit, not the manufactured lines that we practice. Real, tender, loving care. And you know what? You say, I can't teach that. And you need to hire some new people. Whatever you're doing, like selling cars or technology, you need new people. That's what you need. Because if you don't have people who care, you don't have a company that's worth growing. You don't. It's not going to be. You're going to struggle and struggle and struggle. Successful people are extreme. And they're balanced out by being human. They understand that the things that really motivate people have nothing to do with the logic of the situation. In fact, the more logical things appear to be, the less they probably really are. One of the first companies I grew was this air conditioning company. We took it from $2 million to $20 million in less than 2 years. And I remember, in the minutes, it gets hot in the summer, right? Of course, down south, and people's air conditioners go out and say, "Hey, come over here, my air conditioner's broken." We'd go over there and see them, and we'd meet with the homeowner. They would say, I need to get this fixed. And we'd say, what do you need fixed? I need my air conditioner. Well, why do you need it fixed? It's hot. Well, of course it's hot. I'm in your house, it's hot. Why do you need it fixed? Why don't you get a new one? I'll buy some electrical fans for you. Let's wait until the fall when prices come down. I'll give you a better deal. Oh, no, I need it fixed now. And they'd say, well, why do I need it fixed? They said, well, I can't sleep at night. Well, okay, I can't sleep at either. Maybe you take a cold shower and then you can sleep. I said, you don't understand. If I can't sleep at night, I'm going to lose my job. Because my boss is way out of my business now. And he's going to be way out of my business if I'm tired. Oh, so you don't need an air conditioner. You need to keep your job. Now let's talk business. And guess what they did? They bought an air conditioner from me. Because I wasn't solving their refrigeration problem. I was solving the fact that they didn't have a job. They weren't sure how they were going to put food on the table, and the wife was already cranky because they'd made 15 bad decisions in the last month. They weren't sure they weren't going to get a 16, right? So what I was actually doing is something bigger. And that's why that company, part of the reason why that company went from 2 million to 20 million so quickly, was the fact that we reached out and we taught our people, we aren't selling air conditioners. We're selling comfort. Comfort. If you sell air conditioners, you're selling for the wrong company. That's not what we do. Here's the yellow pages. There's a lot of people you can go and see who want to sell air conditioners. So if you've got 17 years of experience, especially as a technician, we probably don't want you in our company. Because we're selling comfort. And you don't know how to sell comfort. You know how to sell the wires to the capacitor to the chip that's smoking a little bit or whatever it is. We don't care about any of that stuff. That's not any of our business. For some of you, you've got people who are really smart, and probably you need to go home and tell them that you love them, but that they can no longer be employed with your company. Right now. That needs to happen. And there's no amount of nurturing or training or teaching that's going to bring them back to life. They're the wrong people for you to get to where you want to be. That's the truth. But many of you, like me, struggle with letting people go because they've been with us and we feel like they're loyal. And I'll tell you this, there's a new way you need to think about this. If someone stops you from getting to where you want to be, they're basically holding you hostage. Anyone like feeling like they're being held back? I used to tell my sales team, they would say, why are you so annoyed with us? Why don't you like to go to meetings? When I was in sales, doing sales, carrying the bag, all that stuff, right? Why don't you like to go to meetings? I feel like you're wasting my time. When you waste my time, it's like you're coming into my fridge and saying, oh, no, you don't get to have milk this week. Let me just take that milk and throw it down the sink. Oh, no, you don't get to drive a new car. Your kids don't get to go to school. We need to be gripped with this sense of urgency that when we waste time, it's not just, we wasted time, we'll do it again tomorrow. We may not have tomorrow. We may not have tomorrow. What we have is now. And that we're surrounded by the people who can help us use what we have now to get to where we want to be as soon as possible. There's a sense of urgency, right? The house is on fire. We have to go get things done while we can. So there's a human element. And part of that means we change our conversation. Now, you may not I use coarse words. My wife gets on me about it. My mom always gets on me about it. I understand. Yeah, sure, thanks. Sorry. Apologize. But you may not use the same words I use. You may not say all the four-letter words. But we do need to start having clear conversations with people, candid conversations. We might call them edgy conversations with our team about what we expect. Don't ever do this again. Because, don't know what. When I say, I mean, like clear. Not, listen, dude, it's not working out. What does that mean? Part of the human element is talking clearly to people and saying, listen, now, you were supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. I was telling someone yesterday in the meeting, I'm actually a big stickler for showing up on time. I don't know why that is. It's probably something that I learned at a very early age, and it's still stuck on me. When I'm there, I want people to be there. Now, I'm not one of these bosses who expects you to stay after me, because I already know that's not going to happen. So, you go home when your work's done, and we'll judge you by that. When you're supposed to show up, I want you to be there. I want you to show up when I'm supposed to. And I'll tell people, listen, there are a lot of things you can do wrong. You can come in at 8:57 and spend 14 minutes on Facebook, and I probably won't even care. I'll high-five you in the hallway, right? But if you show up at 9:03, I'm probably going to have beef with that. We're going to get into a tussle about the fact of why you can't be here on time. So, part of your job is to make sure you're managing expectations. All of them have to speak clearly, because what happens is these things build up within us. We get annoyed, then we get more annoyed, then we get more annoyed, and all of a sudden we explode on someone who could be a high performer. I was talking to a CEO yesterday who called me and said, man, I brought in this guy, and I just don't know. He's not working out. He's a senior vice president. So he's not working out. I said, okay. What does that mean? He's not working out. Oh, he's just not getting it. Okay. So he's not as brilliant as you are. Right. So you do realize there's only one of you, right? And he's been there like 2 weeks. And that you've just begun this relationship, and that part of the communication needs to be, hey, you did this. I was expecting you to do this. Kind of didn't meet my expectations. Was I not clear on giving the instructions, or did you feel like we should go in a different direction? The danger of that conversation not happening, all of you have experienced it, is that builds up, and finally go, this guy's he's a horrible employee. And often it's the case that we're just horrible at communicating what we expect. A part of being a superstar is not just being extreme, going further and farther than anyone else, not just being human, but being disciplined. It's indeed an edge. I'm shocked at how undisciplined I can be at times, and how undisciplined the companies I've worked with can be at times. We all think we're a little more disciplined than we are. That's probably the truth. Now listen, if you're not willing to do stuff and get stuff done, you're not even in the game. You may think you're in the game because you're sitting in the front row at the NBA game, watching the game, but you're not really in. You're just getting sweaty because your dude's flailing his arms in front of you, right? You're not really playing the game. So if we can't get things done, shame on us. The core tenets of business, whether it's selling cars, technology, consulting, aerospace, following up and following through. We have to improve this. You all may be the magical team who follows up and follows through every time, but I suspect that you and your team struggles with this as well. By the way, taking my information and dropping it into MailChimp and having an autoresponder sending me an email, that's not following up. Like, I just delete that, and then I think less of you, and I don't tell you, which I probably should. That would be the edgy thing to do. Right? Like, sincerely following up and following through. I mean, people coming through the front doors who we could build relationships with, and I'm not even going to say that we're not lazy, we're just not disciplined enough to have a system to keep us accountable. Now, I'll throw out a couple tools and technology. I know there's probably some other tools vendors in here that have great technology, and what I recommend isn't anything to take away. It's just that's my goodness. Todoist. Todoist. Okay? I love Todoist. Todoist is a task tracking app that I use on my phone, on my tablets. I use it with my wife. My wife will say, "Oh, can you stop at the store and pick up something?" I'm horrible at that because I'm well-meaning. Man, I'm well-meaning. But boy, do I fail like every time. And she'll say, like, get 3 things. That's the worst. Give me like 1 thing, because I'll forget. I'll get 2, and then I'll get a 3rd one, and the 3rd one's wrong. It's always wrong. And I just come home, and now we kind of almost laugh about it because it's pitiful. But now she'll send me a to-do item on Todoist, and I'll just look at it and go, oh, okay, now I'm not going to miss the mark. Another thing I do with Todoist. How many of you find yourself going, I know I'm forgetting something, I can't remember, right? I mean, you find yourself, you're thinking, anytime that thought goes through your mind, process happens, you know that should be a red light. I'm not as disciplined as I could be. That's what that's telling me. Red light, that's what should be going through your head right now. Anything that it should be, that can be done more than once, I put in Todoist as a reoccurring task. Let me tell you about a silly reoccurring task that popped up last night at 9 p.m. Take the trash to the curb. Sounds silly. I'm calling my 10-year-old son, Bryce. His name's also Daniel, but we call him Bryce. Bryce, go grab the trash, man, and take it to the curb. It's like, all right, yeah, no worries, I got it, Dan. So then I'm going, done. Check it off my list. I didn't really do it, but it got done. Guess what happens if I don't get that done Monday night? Tuesday morning, the trash guy comes. If he comes and the trash is still inside my house, he's not cool enough to come up and ding my bell and say, can you please bring me your trash? He just goes down the street. And if we have a businessman who's like, dude, tell me, man, I'm sorry. I got the stuff on my mind over the trash. It's ruining my business life. Like, come on, people, right? I have a Todoist every day that says, send 1 handwritten note to somebody. I'm well-meaning. So I remind myself, hey, idiot, send 1 handwritten note to somebody. I have another note that says, make 3 random calls to CEO friends without pitching them, just to say, hey. So I do. I call them. Hey, you know what? 97% of the time, unofficially, you know what it is? A voicemail I leave. Because they're not expecting my call and they're stuck in a board meeting and I know it. And I go, yo, I'm driving down the road here to go see Tracy. Life's good. Just thinking about you. Wanted to say, have a happy new year. It took me, is it in counting? Was that 7.5 seconds? Something like that. Very short, right? And I'm on to the next one. And I do 3 of those and I check it off. And guess what happens? I probably do something more than any of you. I make 1,000 more calls a year than all of you. Because I'm silly enough to just do 3 a day. Every day. And 1 handwritten note. Every day. And when that note comes up and says send 1 handwritten note, I go, oh, who should I send one to? Because I don't really have a plan. There's no real agenda. I go, hey, Michael, thanks for having me on the podcast. You too. Well, that was really cool. Send you a handwritten note. I haven't sent you one yet, but that would be cool. Imagine if I did. Fair enough. And so what happens is, again, 97% of the time, no one calls me and says, dude, I got your handwritten note. That was baller. No one says that. What they do is they open a note from somebody that's in a smaller piece of stationery, and it says, we love you, Waldschmidt Partners. And they go, huh, that was pretty cool. And they go about their day, and maybe for a few seconds of their life, I've helped heal them. And maybe that healing helps them go be a rock star. And maybe when they really need help, they go, who was that guy who helped heal me a couple months ago? I feel a little broken right now. How can that dude help heal me again? And maybe I'll pay him outrageous amounts of money to come help me. And I go, thank you. I'll help you. Right? That's how that works. So, Todoist is another big thing. I also use it, by the way, horribly expensive. Horrible. So get ready. $3 per user per month. So, I mean, talking about break the bank. I mean, you can't afford to be badass on $3. And, it's like half a Big Mac or something. So, Todoist, another tool I like to use is called Contactually. I've got 37,000 people in my Google phone that I'm supposed to know and call and all that stuff. I have 2 Tracys. I noticed last night I was trying to text you, and I eventually ended up emailing you, and I had 2 Tracys. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to merge those two together. 37,000 people I need to know contextually surfaces up relevant information that I should know and tells me what, when to say hi, when to say not. It puts pipelines and programs and all kinds of neat things in there. I also use Mention. Mention.com to look. I am somewhat narcissistic and want to know what people are saying about me on the socials. So I do use Mention.com to keep track of all of that. And when I find a mention, I try to reply to all of them. I mean, look, if someone's going to take the time to make a semi-kind remark about me, I probably, as rare as those are, I should probably take the time to say, hey, cool, thanks, nice to meet you too, right? So again, following up and following through, left to my own devices, I'm not Googling myself every 5 minutes. I don't have time for that, right? So Mention starts saying, hey, somebody over here is saying really nice things about you. You might want to reply and say thank you, like your mom taught you to do when you were 7. So I try to do that. Another tool I like to use is we use all of the Google Suite across our company. All of the Google Suite. And it's free, right? Well, actually, it was free up until 2 or 3 years ago. Now we pay for it, but it's like $10 a user a month. It's something really low number. But inside of Gmail, I use something called Full Contact. Every time I get an email, again, it's free. Every time I get an email, when I hover over the email address, it tells me everything I want to know about that dude. Where they work, where they've been, how old they are, who they're connected to on Facebook, if they're cool. Well, it doesn't tell me that or not. But basically everything else about what they're doing. And in an instant, I know if I need to give this 10 seconds or whether I need to give this 100 seconds. Yesterday, I'm working with this massive healthcare company, and out of the blue, someone emailed me that I had not met before at that organization and just said, hey, I read your book. I had such an emotional reaction. I wanted to stop and just say thanks to you. And I was like, cool. And then I noticed in Full Contact it said, this is the president of this division. I was like, oh, let me send a little more thoughtful, longer response. Like, thank you, and I'd like to do work for your business. I didn't send that because that's pretty self-serving. But I did send longer than a 10-second response. I'm not that horrible. But I did say thank you and took a look. Full Contact service set up. So a lot of times people email us, we don't even know who they are, right? We don't know what's going on. 10 seconds, I know what I need to know about that person. So Mention, we talked about contactually, we talked about Todoist. There's other technology. Listen, if you're not willing to do things, you're never going to get things done. If you're not willing to try, and if you don't have tools to keep you honest and accountable, then you won't know whether you're meeting the market. Another thing I like about Todoist, by the way, is if you have other people on your team, we're all connected. So I immediately delegate something to somebody. When it's done, they mark that it's complete, and I get notified on my phone. A little push notification, ding, 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 something's done. Guess what that stops me from doing? Hey, did you get this done? Like, that just wasted 4 seconds of my emotional energy. And now I know, he got this done. And guess what I tell my team? If you don't know how to do something because there's comments, you can leave comments, you can take a picture of it. So they're working and they're like, what do you think about this? Take a picture, I look at the picture, and I go, oh, that looks good. And we get things done this way. So it stops us from stopping and doing the old legacy way of like checking around. Hey, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And we're tired by the end of the day, and nothing awesome has gotten done, and people feel nagged, right? It's just horrible. So if you're not doing things, then like you don't even deserve to be in the game. You need to pack it up and find something else to do. But another part of discipline is denying. Now, let me just, if we're going to be successful people, we've got to work on living fit. There are three main things that will undercut most businesses. And 3 things that superstars do really well when it comes to discipline in this area of denying. Let me sum up denying before I get to the 3 with one sentence. It's not what you're willing to do ultimately that will make you successful. It's what you're willing to do without until you get there. I know a lot of people who will say, I'm willing to do anything. I'll do it all. But if you ask them to do without, they've got beef. If you say, I need you to do without sleep so that you get more done, ooh, we're going to bring Jesus into this, right? There's some excuse somehow. But I'm going to say that I need to be balanced. If I'm not balanced, that's bad. Blah, 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 right? We're happy to. You need to do without a $200 cable bill so you can use that $200 to buy some more online training so you can make your life better. Oh, I gotta watch the Dancing with the Stars. That's the wife. That's our me time. That's our we time. That's how we do that. right? We're busy. That's our time. We sit on the couch. We look at this thing, and it's an intimacy. That's how we do that. Right? We're big to defend all the things we can't live without. And then we wonder why we never get to where we want to be. You know what? Every life I look at of ordinary people who achieve outrageous success, they all do without. They do without some serious stuff. Some of them do without homes. Ever read the story of like Og Mandino? They live without homes. They live without dignity. What about someone like Henry Ford who went bankrupt? You know how many times he went bankrupt? Like 4 or 5 times, right? Before he figured out how to run an automotive company, he actually ended up changing a few things when it comes to manufacturing, right? Impacted all of our lives. What about guys like William H. Macy, who went bankrupt 7 times? Learn how to say a dang suits and ties, right? I mean, I lost my home doing some multi-million-dollar juggling of business deals. I mean, I felt like a fool. Imagine going bankrupt once and then going, yeah, and then twice, and then 3, and then 4. I mean, that's an uncomfortable situation for the whole life, right? That's you have to explain that. Like, so we got to pack up again. It's time to go to another place, another city, right? Another home. We lost it, right? What are we willing to do without? Are we willing to do without awards? Are we willing to do without the fact that we're not getting results as quick as somebody else who's using the shiny new get-rich-quick tactics, right? Because those things always look good up front. They always look good initially. Oh, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm there. And then 2 months later, you're the has-been, and the guy who's really putting in the effort is the real deal, right? What are we willing to do without? Think about it. What are those things in your life you're going, I need that. You can't touch that. One of the first questions I ask clients when we work with them is, what can't I touch? That's a trick question. Because that's, can't break it? Challenge me. Boom, it's getting broken, right? The first thing you say I can't touch, I'm going to touch that. That's the first thing I ask CEOs. What can I mess with? I can't mess with advertising. Can't mess with accounting. Think about it. What in your own life do you say, you can't mess with this? I'll improve everything else, but not this. Right? I'm not going to touch this. That's probably the thing that you need to get a little more discipline in your life with, right? It needs to be with our employees. There's three of these. Financially fit, physically fit, mentally fit. You can't be mentally fit if you're not financially fit. One of the big things we saw with running a real estate company, agents live paycheck to paycheck. Then they sell 3 homes and make 10 grand. Like, whoa, I got a Mercedes. What the hell are you doing? Sell the car, idiot. You don't need a Mercedes. Who are you trying to be? You're trying to pretend to be somebody who's not. You're broke. That's who you are with a big car payment, right? And all of the clients you're driving around in real estate, right, don't care you have a Mercedes, and they don't even know that you're broke. Just you know. You're trying to impress you. It's ridiculous. You can't be mentally fit if you're not financially fit. Look, one way to be financially fit is to be physically fit. Sometimes you just got to go punch something. Then you got to work up a sweat. The number is I won't get too nerdy, but the part of your brain that controls fears in the back right of your brain, right? We call this the amygdala, the hippocampus. It's activated by anything from smells to sights, even locations. Now we know that your hippocampus is driven by location, which is why, through the fantastical memory, like where you got engaged, it's like, oh, this is great. Every time I'm in this place, I feel magical and wonderful. Could be the opposite, too. It's like, oh, I hate that place. Why would that? Oh, they gave us bad food last time. It's like, really? Okay. And you base your fears off of something you don't even know that happens in the back. The front left part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, actually is driven by activity. So the one thing that negates fear, squashes it, is activity. Almost any activity. This is why when you hit your thumb with the hammer, the first thing, say something, you shout, you hit, you throw something. Why does that feel like it helps? Because it's activity. It doesn't let fear and pain overwhelm your sensory perception. Activity is what drives it. When you feel like you're out of control, go get physical. Seriously. Get a punching bag in your office. Have people, when they get upset, go hit it. We don't know what to do? Take a couple punches, work up a sweat. Seriously, break something. We do it all the time. There's nothing better than having some old plates you get from Goodwill. You know what? When something's not working right, we're just going to frisbees. And then nothing, get some cardboard boxes, punch holes in them. It sounds Neanderthal, it sounds crazy. All right, what are we trying to do? We're trying to become superstars. So we're changing our behavior to flush our minds out of the fear, flush the pain, all the stuff that's holding us back out so that we can do the things that we're afraid to do right now. Listen, one of the reasons why I run so far, run over 6,000 miles in the last few years on the roads. In October, I ran 100 and a 50 and a marathon, all 2 weeks apart. It kicked my ass. And people often say, well, I did this, I'm doing this 4 mile this weekend, but that's nothing compared to you. I said, that's the wrong thing. You're not competing against me. And I'm not competing against you. Because you're probably faster than I am. So, I'm the old slow guy who just got to pencil along at the end of the street. The reality is, each of ourselves, our competition to live fit is one that we compete against ourselves. And for me, when I need to clear my head, I put on some running shoes. You know why I run? It's cheap. I barely need shorts, unless it's the weather. Now I got to wear a shirt. And I need a pair of shoes and socks. That's it. And I need a ball, and I need guards or pads, usually. Right? All I'm doing is socks and shoes, and I'm outside. And while I'm running, I'm pushing my body, and I'm working the adrenaline. You know what I'm thinking? If you can do this, you can do that. I told someone yesterday, a CEO yesterday, I was just sitting in his office, in every race I've ever been in. I finished 100 mile in the middle of the Ozark Mountains. I started at 6 a.m. in the morning. I finished at just under 1 a.m. in the next morning. 19 hours and 29 minutes and 21 seconds. You remember the 21 seconds when you're doing something like that. And at every race I've ever run, whether it's a marathon or whether it's a 50 miler or a 55 miler or a 100 miler, there's a point where it's survival. Either I just got to get done because I'm going to die. I'm not thinking about going fast. I'm not thinking about anything other than how do I not die? 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 You know what the reality is? The thought in your head that says, you should just quit. One, if you're running a 100 miler, you're probably stuck somewhere in the middle of somewhere. That would not be a good place to quit running. But if you are in a place where you can quit, you know what happens? You know what's a strange thing about running? Or anything. Hitting a bag, running a treadmill, doing an elliptical. About 4 or 5 minutes after you're done, how do you feel? Good, right? You're good. It's all good. You know what you realize? Whether you run 100 miles or 1 mile, you feel totally fine 4 or 5 minutes later. But you know what you feel totally awful about? Is if you quit before you get to the finish line. So when I was doing this 100, the one thing that went through my mind was, I finished 4th place overall, which is somewhat respectable. As I was running, especially trying to get in, and I knew I was 19 minutes, I was trying to finish under 30 minutes, 19:30. I did 19:29:21, so I got whatever the math is on that. I told you I dropped out, so I get special privileges. As I was running, I realized the last few minutes, as I was running that, full, as fast as I could run, which when you've been running for 19 hours may not be as fast as you would think, was it's all going to be over in a couple seconds. It's the same thing that I thought about when I was working 100-hour weeks building a technology company for nothing. It's all going to be over in a few minutes. I just have to break through right now. And in each case, when you feel like it's survival and I don't know what to do, when I come back to business decisions and I go, oh, this is really tough, I go, well, if I could run and I could do this thing and that was painful, I could probably do this thing even though it's painful. And so this, which is punching a bag or running on a treadmill or doing, racquetball or whatever sport you're into, might seem like it's a waste of time, but every day, if I can, if I'm not in a place like this where I'm away from my office for an hour, hour and a half, my staff knows, don't call me, I'll be out running. When I come back to prepared, I might have a million YouTube ideas. So stop working on that, we're going to do all this right now. No, we've learned, we don't do that as much. But that living fit drives into every other area of my life. Now, listen, instead of going and buying that new iPhone, instead of going and doing that next new expenditure because it makes you feel good, why not feel good by taking back control of your life and being a little more fit? One big thing we learned from looking at ordinary people who achieved outrageous success was that, well, this person over here was making excuses for spending money, and this person was saving. In every case, there was a situation, you might call it an opportunity, that appeared in front of both of them. In this audience, it might be opening your own franchise or expanding, right? Or landing a new big deal. These people who are well-meaning but have been spending their money saw this opportunity and said, wow, that's a great opportunity. These people who had been saving their money said, Wow, that's a great opportunity. They both saw the opportunity. This person said, I really would like to quit my job and do that. That would be awesome. My whole life I've been dreaming about doing that. That'd be epic. I mean, you guys all need to pray for me so that I can go do that, right? That's what we do. This person said, I think I'm going to do that. And this person stayed stuck, and this person stayed with it because they live financial fit. When we say no to stuff now, it's not because we enjoy the pain of saying no. Like, dear kid, no, you can't do that. Not because I'm saying no to his hopes and dreams, because I want to say yes to something that's bigger and better later. I don't even know what it is now. You all don't know what it is. But what if today was the day you were supposed to win? And you weren't ready for it. What if your opportunity comes on the way home? Do you have enough firepower to go after it, to take it, to win? If the answer is maybe, then you need to get with Tracy immediately and figure out, or someone that you trust, and figure out a path forward how you can take care of the opportunity. Because the opportunities come up all the time. You'll either be the person who's making excuses and saying things like, man, I really wish we could take advantage of that. We're going to wait till later. Or you're the person who says, yep, I've been waiting for this opportunity my entire life. And your business doesn't go like this. It goes up and over and up and over and up. So if you're not willing to do amazing things, you're not going to be successful. If you're not willing to deny yourself, really challenge your people. As an organization, we're going to live fit, live financially fit, we're going to live mentally fit. You know, as an SVP in a big organization, if you say I need to talk to a therapist or I need to get help for my mind, you're seen as weak or inferior. Is it any wonder why we're all taking, what is this, Xanax and these other things, the antidepressants, right? Which, by the way, the commercials say like may cause more chances of damaging yourself, right? And we do all of this stuff, right? Because we can't just say, I need help. And this is where we have to start putting things in perspective. When our goals become so important to us, we say, I need help because where I want to be is so important to me that I will do whatever it takes to get there. That's when we raise our hands and say, I'm going to get help. We need to encourage our people. Healthy, motivated, enthusiastic employees are going to make each of you more money. It's going to make me more money. My team that's physically fit and mentally fit, they're going to, because they're trained to be warriors. Like the movie 300, right? You're raised from a kid to do what? Survive, fight, right? You're trained to carry a sword. You felt it. It's pounds, right? You're trained to carry this and cut someone else's head off. Your whole life, that's what you've been raised to do. And then we stop training at a certain point. We stop preparing to win, and then we stop demanding it from our employees. And we wonder why, when the opportunity comes up for us to take advantage of something, we're like, it's just not a good time. When isn't it a good time to go be awesome? If we find ourselves having these internal monologues, these dialogues, now is the time to work on being more financially fit. And you guys know it too. In real estate, 8 out of 10 people who walk through our doors can't get qualified to buy a home. How similar are the stats for cars? Is it that bad? 8 out of 10 can't? Let's say 7 out of 10 can't. Is it half? 50-50? Half? Think about the other half of those people. What are we doing with them? You know what we started doing about a year ago? Going back to those people and saying, it's really difficult to try to tell someone else how to manage their money, so we're not going to do that. But if you want help so that you can live your dreams sometime down the road in a year or two and get qualified, we're here to help you. And no gimmicks, no bullshit, no this is church so we're going to dig into all your dirty underwear sort of thing. We're just going to have a really frank conversation, have classes, and teach you and pay for you to get some training in order to improve your life. You know what's sad about that? Maybe 10% of that 80% show up. Because it's hard and it's uncomfortable. It's the same reason why 17-year-old kids don't stop smoking. Because 17-year-old kids don't die from cancer. 70-year-olds do. Right? And the problem is when you stop smoking at 17 and keep smoking at 67, by the time you're 70, it's probably too late. And so that's the point of discipline. That's the impact of discipline. Is that if I work 1 extra hour a day, that's it, 1. You got 24 of those bad boys. I work 1 extra hour a work day, not even 7 days a week. I will have worked 13 months in the time each of you has worked 12. And if we do that for a bunch of years, it's statistically improbable that you will ever work smarter than I can work harder on you. Because I will do it every day. And when you get tired, I will not get tired. When you get cranky, I'll still be cranky, but putting that out. And that's the empowerment. I'm an idiot. I dropped out of college, right? I dropped out of college twice. And yet, these are simple, practical ways that I can dominate. You can dominate as well. You have to be extreme. If you want radical results, you have to be extreme. You have to be human. You have to start caring about how people feel. You have to start healing people. Really, we have to start doing this. It's the number one way that companies are growing. If I look at across the spectrum of verticals that we support, whether it's Siemens Medical that does billion-dollar mammogram machines that cost $750,000 a piece, how do you sell it to a doctor? That's not a one-call close. Right? That's not a one-call close. That's information and nurturing, right? What do you do? How do you build that relationship? How do you love people enough when they realize that they're empowered to make the right decision? So we can't just be extreme. We can't just be human. We have to be disciplined. And the last part about edgy, which we've done way out of order, which I enjoy, is being givers. A lot of us talk about giving as if it's something we want to do, right? I wish I could give. And someday when I make $1 million, I'm going to give. And so you probably won't make $1 million. Because people who wait to give until they have enough to give never have enough to give. Isn't that interesting? That the people who give because it's who they are. Again, not what they do, it's who they are. The greatest, I went to seminary, so my illustrations can come from the good book, which I think is kind of the winning authority on all stories. So, one story that I think rings true is the story of Jesus in the temple, where he watched people giving money. And I always try to put myself in the context of where the story is happening. Because in South Carolina, this is the Bible, though. We've got like 300 churches within, like you can throw a quarter. It's like, there's all these churches. So you can imagine Jesus was in the temple watching people give. Now, some churches, they have a box on the wall. You just put your money in as you leave. So it's very kind of private. Other churches, they pass the plate, and they're supposed to take your whole top hat out and pour it in, all that good stuff. People are watching, splash. But Jesus tells a story. He's looking at this box, and people are putting money in, and he sees this old woman take 2 little small coins, which were pennies, basically, and put them in. And the rich people are splashing the pot, putting this money in, and Jesus tells his disciples, that woman is going to inherit the earth. And of course, everyone's like, come on. Why are you saying that? He said, because she gave what she had. Now, again, this is not me preaching a sermon at you. If anyone needs a sermon, it's me. But I think that simple message rings true. When we talk about giving now, we often think about it in the context of money, right? If I were to say, we need to give, you'd be like, okay, let me see, it's not much, right? What am I giving? Most of us wouldn't think my time, my emotional energy, right? The first thing we think about when we say give is money. Immediately, right? Immediately. How much? Do you accept checks? You can't take a credit card, right? That's our initial reaction. Why? Because it's easier to give money because it means the least to us. You know what means a lot to us? Grabbing time on a weekend when we could be spending with family, donating it to a rescue shelter. We did something this Thanksgiving we'd never done before. Sarah and I made this pact, blood oath, that we would not let our kids be raised spoiled. Because of cousins and the family, there's lots of things that people have, and so it's like if our kids are spoiled, we've already told them we'll just start taking toes off each time this occurrence happens. You will not be spoiled. You will be grateful for what you have. And so this Thanksgiving we did something. Sarah and I said, what can we do that really gets them inspired? We went to a soup kitchen in South Carolina, and we thought we were going to have serving. Like you think of the serving, right? We're going to serve. And that's going to show the kids that we're really involved. Well, we signed up on the list, and we got there. We said, hey, great to have you. We want you to go to the back, put these gloves on. You know what our job was? The most disgusting, like vile job. The turkeys that were already cooked and picked apart, that had been boiled in like vats of oil, were piled. And they needed someone to take them apart further so they could throw them out. And so literally, it was like congealed, goopy, like, maybe like constantly nauseating sensation of feel and smell. And I'm thinking, why did I ever want to do this? Whatever, just the kids come, and of course they loved it. They thought it was magical. And Sarah and I were smiling, hey, this is great. Let's try. And but when we got home, they said, this is the best Thanksgiving ever. I don't even think at 7 and 10 they really knew what they were doing. They were just playing around with Play-Doh or something. They were just having fun, taking the old turkey bits and throwing them in the trash cans and stuff like that. But the reality about most of our lives is that we don't give enough. And that awesome people who give the most. People who win the most, but not just win from time to time. And I'm not talking about arrogant sports athletes who sign a big contract. That's not winning. That's called getting paid. There's a difference between getting paid and winning. People who win, give. I tell the story in my book of Hazel Minor. The first automotive advertisement in the world that we know of happened because of a 12-year-old girl in the middle of North Dakota. This little girl named Hazel Minor in the middle of Center, North Dakota, went to school in a little one-room log cabin. Like many prairie families in that day, you could see miles across. As a 12-year-old girl, she would take her brother and sister in the buggy to school. One particular day, her father saw a storm was coming across the prairie. Have you ever been out west where you could see and you're like, man, I think we should be getting there, but we're not even close. It's way out there. They saw a storm coming, and he took another horse and sleigh went out across the prairie to intercept the children before they came home. As he got to the school, the kids had not left yet. And so he told the kids, wait here, I'm going to put my horse and sleigh into the what do you call it? Barn. Yes, sorry. Wow, I didn't miss that. I put this in the barn, when I come out, I'm going to take you kids home. Well, while he was putting the horse in the barn, the storm picked up, the wind began to pick up, and the family horse got spooked and took off. Imagine his father, he comes out of the barn, and there's tracks. And visibility is only a few feet. And so Hazel was on this sleigh with her brother and sister who were younger than her. She's 12, old Maud, true story, neighbors, pulling this sleigh into the snow. And so the father is now going, what happened to our daughter? Well, sleigh goes, horse is pointing towards home. Sleigh hits a boulder, flips over on its side. Here's this 12-year-old girl. They didn't have aluminum back then, right? The cars that we have, they have an aluminum sleigh. It's made out of big old iron, right? So this sleigh is now on top of her and her brother and sister. She can't push it over. So there she is in this snow that's wet and mushy, and it's cold. And for a while, as they're standing behind the sleigh, the wind's coming against the sleigh, and they're not as cold as they could be. And then the wind changes direction, and snow begins to build up around them. Well, the father is frantic, as all of us would be, with anyone that we knew that got lost, right? Sitting at a search party, looking. Now, at the same time, Hazel's in the middle of a snow pile. She grabs the blankets from the sleigh and puts them out on this mushy snow and tells her brother and sister, lay down and cover you up. Well, if they were staying underneath the blanket, have you ever been in a sleeping bag where people are kicking, in comes up? Well, the wind was whipping up and pulling this blanket off from different sides. And so she got up and grabbed the blanket and tucked around her brother and sister who laid down on top of them. Well, her father's still looking for her. 12, 13, 14 hours later,
They come across what is the side of a sleigh with snow built up around it. And when they came to the other side, they see this young girl who, when they arrive, had taken off her jacket and put it across her brother and sister, and put the blanket on top of her brother and sister, and laid down on top of it. Her arms wrapped around her brother and sister. And of course, she was frozen, quite dead. Brother and sister still alive. Now, at her funeral the next week, the pastor gave a simple eulogy where he quoted a verse from the scripture, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he gives his life for a friend," which kind of summed up what happened there. Today, in North Dakota, there's still a monument to this girl they call the Angel of the Prairie. To any passerbyers who get lost in the blizzard, they believe that Hazel is the angel, their savior, to guide them to safety. This became such a sensation, like this simple story, like today we think, this 12-year-old died, like 50 people died, who cares? It was such a sensation, right, back in these days, that the story, they made Broadway shows about her, the Angel of the Prairie. In fact, Ford Motors used her story to say, you'll love your vehicle like Hazel loved her brothers and sisters. Isn't that amazing? It was all based on this basic premise of you give what you have. Now, for most of us, we never are asked to give our lives. And we joke about it sometimes. Like, look, babe, I'll take a vote for you. We hope we never have to do that, right? Am I the only one who hopes I never have to do that? Right? But this idea of giving is really powerful. It's really powerful because if we sum up everything we've talked about today, the fact that humans having pain and fear, we talk about the fact of us needing to be extreme and being disciplined. The one thing that wires all of this together is the fact that the only way we can do those things is to give what we have and to give more value than people expect. Now, the sad truth when it comes to business is most of what we call giving isn't giving at all. It's trading. There's nothing wrong with trading. It's not giving, right? We'll say something like this. I'll give you my white paper on 17 ways to run a masterful dealership if you fill out this form. Now, is that giving? That's trading, right? I'll trade you my PDF for the chances that I can harass you for a sale down the road, right? We do this on our websites. Fill out 14 fields of data. Once you've pre-selected the car you think you want, I'll have my automated bot respond back to you, and then 2 days later I'll have some real person call you back and see if you're still interested in the car. Giving something different. What if we ran our holidays off that simple premise? I'll trade you something. Well, actually we do that. It's kind of a gag, like the white elephant gift, right? It's a gag. It's not what really Christmas, it's not what about giving gifts to people about. Giving means you give something that has value to someone. Something that they have value. We're not really doing that in this. Think about in your business. What you're giving to somebody that costs you something. Like money. Money, money, money. What are you giving to people that costs you something? It really means something to you. And you're like, here, giving it. This is our gift to you. Whether you buy something or not, we believe in giving. Here's our gift. Right? Giving means that it costs you something. If it doesn't cost you something, it's not worth anything. I'm sorry, but PDFs and ebooks are not something. They're not. That's not a gift. It's not a gift. It may be information, and maybe really good business juju, right? But it's not a gift. It's not a gift. It's not giving. For me to give you something that I can learn by going to Wikipedia. There we go. Now I know what your ebook's all about. There's a guy who has ebooks to sell you. No, I don't have ebooks to sell you. Right? What are we doing that gives people lots of value? Right? We have to start questioning ourselves. We say we're doing these things, but then we act in a way that's completely different. We're not giving that. So we ask ourselves, what can we give that allows people to feel impassioned to do business with us? Well, Costco gave away food. For them, by the way, if you look at the analyst reports at the time, that was like the stupidest move they could have done. You know what analysts said? Hungry people don't buy what? Food. Boy, hungry people buy food. People who aren't hungry don't buy food. Right? If you're not hungry, you don't go to the store. You don't need to buy food, right? Because you're full. So why are we feeding people? Because they're going to come to our grocery store and instead of putting $10 of groceries in, they're going to put $5 in. Because you just fed them $5 worth of groceries. So this is really stupid, Costco, and we're going to short your stock because you're acting in a way that's absolutely ridiculous, right? Why would we feed people when we're in the business of selling people the stuff that we're giving them for free? And why would Zappos give away shipping and let you walk around in shoes when you're just going to screw them over? Why? Because when we get a gift, we feel magical, right? It's like, wow, that's really, if it's worth value, we go, that was really cool. Something happens inside us where we feel changed, right? Our experience is something that we never forget. So how can you create those moments? What's something you could give that really has value to people that they say, you know what, how I view you, how I view your organization, how I view your team will never be the same again, right? My experience has been dramatically changed. Let me wrap up because I think I'm 12 minutes over time here, right? Am I 12
All
minutes?
good.
Yeah. So, look, if 1,000 people don't lie. These may be the only 1,000 ordinary people on the planet who ever achieve success. Maybe everybody else, the formula is you go to college and get a degree, and that degree guarantees you a job, and then once you're in the job, you get an MBA so you can get promoted. Once you get promoted, then you can be there for 30 years and get a gold watch and retire and be happy. Maybe that's the real formula. What we uncovered was that it was dramatically different. And that if you want to be a superstar, whatever you're doing, that your thinking has to change, and that the questions you ask yourself and the rules that you live your life by have to change. It starts with what we call edgy. You have to be extreme. I'm sorry. Extreme for you might be, instead of putting your pigtail on this side, putting it on that side. But my wife colors her hair red, and then it's pink, and then it's purple. For her, not having her hair colored is extreme, right? That's how she wants to have very trendy and all of this good stuff, right? For each of us, it's going to be different. Your extreme is different than my extreme. Your extreme is different than everyone else's in this room. What are we doing that's different? What are we trying that's different? Right? One of our clients, I sold them this. I said, listen, a company that many of you are using tablets from, and computers from, said they were telling me how fast they were answering their support calls. And I said, they were like, we're getting to all these calls within 24 hours. And I said, that's the wrong metric. How quickly you answer a call isn't the right metric. How many of you have ever been to somebody on help support or phone? Like, you'll probably still have your hands up if I say how many of that happened in the last 24 hours, right? It happens to us all the time. We get done with the support exchange and we don't really feel supported. I said, so here's a new metric. I want us to measure outrageously satisfied customers. How many outrageously satisfied customers do we have? We don't know. Well, how would we know? How would you know, whatever you're doing, if you had an outrageously satisfied customer? Maybe they would volunteer that information themselves. They would put it out on the socials, right? Wow, just stopped by ABC Motors. Those people were epically awesome. Right? You wouldn't ask them to do it. You wouldn't even have to send them a survey. Out of 10 stars, how would you rate our bathroom? Whatever it is, the survey that you're sending. How quick were we to attend you? How would you feel? This one's my favorite. How likely would you be to refer our services to someone else? No, never, never. I'm not in the business of referring anything to anyone at any time. This is not what I do, right? If I like you and it comes up spontaneously, I might do that, but now asking me to think about it really annoys me, so now I'm less likely to do it, right? Sorry, because I'm cranky, and that's just how my brain thinks. But what are we doing to drive outrageously satisfied people? If our goal is to answer support requests in 24 hours, that's pretty easy to do. What do? We hire more people to do it, or we answer them more quickly? Is that good? Okay, good. Fine. Next one. Are we done? Okay, good. We crank through them like a robot, or we hire more people to help us answer them. And if I say to you, we want only outrageously satisfied customers, and we want more of them, exponentially more of them tomorrow than we had today, now we have to huddle up inside our room. Now we got to think about how we create some pixie dust, right? How do we make this happen? Because this isn't about more bodies or more robots, right? This is about how we change people's lives for the better, which, by the way, goes back to where we all started in the beginning. About pain, fear, love, about the real world. See, that's where edgy kind of comes together. If we're pushing the edge of the envelope and extreme in what we believe in, We're disciplined about doing it every day. I was joking with Will last night, as far as running. He was asking me, "You going to grab a beer with us?" I said, "Yeah." I was kind of hesitant. I was like, "Yeah, kind of." It's about training. Michael Jordan doesn't wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I think today I'm going to go have 17 cupcakes because I feel like it." He eats his protein shake and has his nutritionalist eat what he eats because that makes him a superstar. There's no second thought about, I don't feel like doing it today, so I'm not going to do it. You don't feel like winning? Of course you feel like winning. So you act like you feel like winning, right? That's what we do. It's not something we do it every once in a while. We do it all the time because we want to win. So you're extreme, and you do what's extreme every day. If you stop doing the right thing before it starts working, you've done the wrong thing. We do a lot of good things as leaders. Being here is a really good thing. But if you stop doing the right thing before it starts working, you've done the wrong thing. A lot of us say, I look at my SEO data and it doesn't show that I'm winning. Yet. I hired this new sales guy. It doesn't look like he's winning. Yet. That's what I say back to you. Yet. How do you know he's not winning? When was Henry Ford winning? On his first bankruptcy? On his second bankruptcy? On his third bankruptcy? He was winning the whole damn time, right? Because he was willing to do whatever it takes. So was Goddard, by the way, one of the brilliant rocket scientists of all time. He had 500 plus rockets blow up in the sky. How many millions of dollars a rocket costs to get up off the ground, have one blow up, and not just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but 500? And by the way, for all of us who think we have really sophisticated business plans, how about fried chicken? And Harlan Sanders, who tried 1,027 times to get someone to give a crap about fried chicken. Right? We're like, oh yeah, my business is really cool. Go fry some chicken and tell me you're serious about being an entrepreneur. Right? That's real life. And then our greatest inventor of all time, Tom Edison, who invented the light bulb. When do you start telling someone, listen, dude, you tried it a couple hundred or 1,000 times, but 10,000 times to get a light bulb to stay on for more than a few seconds? When are you wacky? When are you how about you get a real job? No, my real job is what I'm doing now, which is what all of you are doing now, and it won't work if you stop it too soon. Most of us just stop too soon. With all the data says, the data always tells you what was done. It doesn't tell you what you could be. The data will always tell you what was done, not what you could be. So if you want to focus on the past, which is another code word for has been, right? Which no one likes those dudes. Then you focus on what the data says. And by the way, I'm on the board of a half a dozen tech companies, so I'm not coming at you thinking that, we need to play this old school, the data is evil. I love my data. That's all that data does for me, okay? That's all it does. And magic that we can do on the web and creating this culture of magic shows up months later. Long after we've already felt it. Long after we felt the momentum in the air of an enthusiastic workforce and clients who come in and go, wow, this place looks different. I don't feel the pressure. I feel people loving me. I feel like I really belong here. Long after that tingles in the air, we get data that says, ding, ding, it's working. We go, yeah, turn that alarm off. We already know. We know it's working. We can feel it in our bones, right? And then give it. We have to challenge ourselves when we sit in these meetings. Not whose name can we put on the board, which check marks of how many sales. I want another line item on it that says, outrageously awesome service. How many check marks are we getting then? You got your 10 car sales, but you got Zippo in that field. You need to go down the street. I don't need your cars, your 10 cars, because I can go get someone else who can do 10 cars. What I need someone is who can create magical moments, because that's going to turn into 100 cars next year. But because we want the 10 now, we don't mind smoking for another 60 years. And then we wonder why we're dead of cancer at 70. It should make you angry. That we don't have more courage to stand up and say, I want it so bad, I'll change whatever needs to change. It's me. That's me. I struggle with that too. I have to look myself in the face in the mirror and say, if you don't want it, you can't lie to yourself. You got to be gripped in your soul that this has to change. And then not only about the giving part and the extreme part and the discipline part, but just remember that it's always what it's not. Someone comes in and says, yeah, I got the car, I got my finance, I'm all good to go, I just want to buy the car. You may want to double check on that, right? It's always what it's not. People, I'm doing okay, I'm doing good. Maybe they're not. Employees late, I just was overslept. Maybe that's not the real reason. Maybe there's something else going on. It's always what it's not. Things don't add up. Oh man, look on the spreadsheet, looks like we did 2 more cars this month, we'd be okay, everything was fine. Maybe that's not the real answer. Maybe it's something more caveman-ish than that. Maybe it has to do with an environment you need to create where people automatically want to be awesome. Right? Maybe it's a culture you need to start feeding where people say, I want to go change the world, and I'm going to start right here. So, I would love to tell you more stories, but I think I'm way out of time. They've got their guns back there, they're going to start shooting. But I'll tell you this, listen, I see by your expressions that some of you the gears are turning, you're thinking about possible ways that you can be amazing. Listen, if I can help any of you, you let me know. You won't get a bill. I'll probably ask you some hard questions to make sure you're not full of shit. But if you're serious about you, tell this to audiences all over the world, I will be serious about you. If you're serious about you, I'm in. And if you're not in, I can't be in. Because I can't make you want to be awesome. Let me leave you with one more thing. One more thing. People say it's hard to change. You may be listening to me today and go, oh man, I wish I could be like that guy, or I wish I could do this thing. It's so hard to change. Changing isn't that hard. You know what's hard? Wanting to change. When my father retired from being at the NSA under George Bush, he had a mild heart attack. My mom called me one day and said, hey, don't worry, don't freak out, but before you find out from other people, I want you to know your dad just got back from the hospital. He had a mild heart attack. No blockage, but it's something. You know what my dad did the next day? He came home, had new pills to take and stuff like that, went to the cupboard, took the butter, threw it away, took the salt, threw it away, took the chips, threw it away, the cookies, he threw it away. Like on Biggest Loser, ever seen them? They go in there and they start grabbing something, start throwing it away, right? He threw it all away. One day. You know what happened? That day, he needed to change. And I don't want to have to die or know that I might die to want to change. I want to need it right now. And that's something you need to think about too, is what do you need? Not what do you want, what do you need? And if you need to change, baby, let me tell you, you need to think about edgy every day of your life. Thank you.